Ladies and gentlemen, biases. This week we begin with a class text, and in this class text you have an assignment to do for me. In this assignment, you will see in your spiritual reflection this week you have to assess this Bible story, and you have to answer the question. I'll make a reference to it at the end of this. I will make a reference to that again at the end of the Bible text. Let's see what the Bible text says. And it says, "And straightway Jesus constrained his disciples to get into a ship and to go before him unto the other side while he sent the multitudes away. And when he had sent the multitudes away, he went up into a mountain apart to pray. And when the evening was come, he was there alone. But the ship was now in the midst of the sea, tossed with waves, for the wind was contrary. And in the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went unto them walking on the sea. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, It is a spirit. And they cried out in fear. But straightway Jesus spake unto them, saying, Be of good cheer, it is I, be not afraid. And Peter answered him and said, Lord, if it be thou, bid me come unto thee on the water. And he said, Come. And when Peter was come down out of the ship, he walked on the water to go to Jesus. But when he saw the wind boisterous, he was afraid and began to sink. He cried, saying, Lord, save me. And immediately Jesus stretched forth his hand and caught him, and said unto him, O thou of little faith, wherefore didst thou doubt? And when they were come into the ship, the wind ceased." That's the Bible text this week. And so, ladies and gentlemen, one of your assignments for this week, of course, is to determine what bias do you think Peter demonstrated in the decision he made in this story. So Peter made a decision, and he acted upon his decision. I want you to assess the story, assess Peter's decision, and determine which bias Peter demonstrated. And the question would be then, why? Justify your answer. Give me your best. And I want you to think very carefully before you give me a justification, because you have a choice of the bias. You have to defend your answer. Be clear in your defense of your answer, because I may have to ask you a couple questions. Make sure you think, well, if somebody was to ask you, but how about this and how about that? How would you justify this? Make sure you can answer. So I very much look forward to your response, to see which bias you would choose, which of the four we're going to go over now, and then how would you justify which one you determined Peter demonstrated and why. Make sure you have a very sound answer for me. I look forward to hearing you reading your answers very soon. Wonderful. So let's get into biases. So what are biases? A tendency towards a preferred, the word is preferred, way of doing things in order to ease the burden of mentally processing information to make judgments and decisions. Well, that's not hard. We all know a bias is a slant towards something, a preference towards something, a preferred way of doing something. That's a bias, and that's really relatively straightforward, nothing too hard in that. And so we do know that when somebody demonstrates a bias, it's because they have a slant or a bent towards doing something. And that's straightforward enough. A cognitive bias does not result from any emotional or intellectual predisposition towards a certain judgment, but rather from subconscious mental procedures for processing information. In other words, let's say, again, you walk down the street and one day and a dog rushed you, and you got really fearful and you had a reaction or response. We're not talking about an emotional response like that where you would record that in your memory, and then in the future, if you have to walk down the street, you would be careful and be ready for the dog, or prepare your mind to deal with a dog. That's an emotional type of response where, out of fear or out of being suddenly taken off guard, then you would have definitely acted. Now we're not talking about that in terms of bias. We're not talking about some intellectual predisposition where you would be, something that you have studied at great length, and therefore, because you have studied something at very deep length, now you have a considerable approach to something or a belief in something. We're not talking about that. We're talking about there are subconscious things that we just have a slant or bend towards. We have a preference towards something. And we may have had experiences with it in the past, of course, but we like it or we prefer it. It's not something that we have thought through extremely deeply, but it's something that exists in all of us. And remember we said before that people do not always use the rational decision-making process. So the question would be, if they're not always using the rational decision-making process, what exactly are they using? And so we are going through quite a number of those in this class. One of them we already talked about is the grand big topic of heuristics, and we went through 4 specific heuristics. Now we're going through biases. How do biases affect decision making in human beings? Most biases are helpful, but these cognitive shortcuts can cause problems when we are not aware of them and we apply them inappropriately, leading to rash decisions. Alright, so biases help us with shortcuts. We know that shortcuts help us to get through in life. We get by. I mean, we make decisions, it works. For many times, for many of us, it works, and we're fine with that. Alright, but a lot of times, though, they can cause some issues, and those issues may mean that we're coming to not the best quality decisions, and this class is all about decision making, the quality of decisions that people arrive at, and how do they arrive at these decisions. That's what this class is most concerned about. So what are those type of biases? I may have mentioned time before that this class has a lot of flaws. The number 4 is very big in this class. We're going through 4 different major types of heuristics. We're going through 4 major types of biases. And because biases and heuristics are close, if you were to Google anything, you will probably notice that they use them sometimes interchangeably. For some aspects, there's some overlapping, all right, of some of them. But the point is relatively the same. They're shortcuts of decision making. And these are the types of decision making that people tend to use when making decisions, right? Okay, so let's get right into the 4 types of biases. The first one they're listed is the confirmation bias. Now, of course, in a face-to-face class, students will have quite a bit of writing to do right here, but we're not in a face-to-face class, so you get the opportunity to have it written for you. All right, however, you're going to have to take notes of it, of course. All right, and make sure you come back and refer to these when you're looking for examples. So you have to come back in the video and make sure you're clear, all right, to understand it. First type, confirmation bias. This refers to a type of selective thinking where one tends to notice and to look for what confirms one's beliefs and to ignore or not look for or undervalue the relevance of what contradicts one's beliefs. The tendency is to give more mental weight to information that already supports what we believe and ignore what we don't already believe. So we are saying that sometimes people make information to the extent that they may believe information about something, and if there's any other information that comes their way that says, you sure about that? Or maybe there may be some other information for you to consider. The person ignores that and continues making this decision based on what they already held belief. So that's why we read here the tendency to give more mental weight to information that already supports what we believe and to ignore what we don't believe. So somebody may say, well, consider this, or information, and you say, no, I'm not interested in that. I believe this, therefore this is what it is. I'm going to make my decision based on my belief. I'm ignoring any other information that may cause me to update my belief, cause me to change my belief, or cause me to question my belief. I'm going to ignore any information that is going to cause me to do any of that. I'm making my decision strictly on what I believe. That's it. Now, researchers are sometimes guilty of confirmation bias by setting up experiments or framing data in ways that will confirm their hypotheses. So you see that a lot. You say research has shown. One study says that, if you do this, then this will happen. And you're like, well, how many studies? One study. Any other studies have done? No. All right. Well, let's say you believe something. Therefore, sometimes you research based on what we believe. So sometimes you'll hear people say, well, when people say they're doing research, they'll say, well, who's paying to do the research? And they'll say, well, this particular organization. And they'll say, well, the organization might say, well, listen, since we paying for the research, you have to make our organization look good. So frame the information in such a way that will make us look good, right? Because we need that to appear that we have it a particular way. But the more important thing is that, again, framing the research as a slant, remember, bias is a slant, to make it look like this is really what it is. And that happens all around us all the time. People put information across a particular type of way in order to be able to have a slant or a bend towards something. That's all around us. We even talk more about that when we come to the concept of framing. That's going to be a very interesting topic as well. Individuals have to constantly remind themselves of this tendency and actively seek out data contrary to their beliefs. Oh, who does that? Since this is unnatural, it appears that the ordinary person is doomed to bias. So in other words, we're saying that people are typically doomed to bias, right? We do have slant, we do have preferences, we have beliefs that we have, and many times we will act as though those beliefs are true, even if there may be information that may cause us to question or contradict it. So how does that really work in real life? Well, let's get some examples. Some of them very typical examples of that will be what we call old wives' tales. Some people call it folk tales, some people call it superstition. All right. Now, it doesn't really matter whether you believe it or not at this stage for the purposes of this class. We're not debating that in this class. That's not what our debate is. Our debate here is how people come to decisions, and we just want to investigate how people get to the decisions that they make, right? Because they're not always using the rational decision-making process. You already made that decision. All right, we already made that assertion already. So the question is then, what are they doing? So we're discussing what are they doing and how they come to their decisions. So what are some examples of O's wild stays? All right, well, let's see. Let's talk about a few. What about let's see, let's type on here. What about Black Cat on a Friday 13th? I'm sure you've heard about that. All right. If a 13th of a month falls on a Friday, I'm not even sure how it's linked to the Black Cat, but nevertheless, if a 13th falls on a Friday, then you could get bad luck. All right, or if a Black Cat walks across on a Friday 13th of any month, therefore bad luck may come. And so people may make decisions along that line. They might say, oh my gosh, I can't wait today, I'll get bad luck today, today is going to be a bad day. And if anything was to happen that day that actually goes alright, they will attribute it back to the belief that bad luck falls on a 13th on a Friday, especially if you see a Black Cat. That's what confirmation bias is. Now, confirmation bias also, remember, goes as far that you're making a decision based on somebody might say, I don't want to go out today, I'm staying home. Right? So that's making a decision. Alright? And if something were to happen, they will attribute it back to the belief. They'll say, well, I knew it. Alright, so these are examples of that. So you can make your own notes of that. I'm just typing some of the things that people believe and how they may act on. Alright, let's take some other ones. How about, you may have heard that if the palm of your hand is itching, that means you're getting money. That's interesting. So let's type that: palm itching and money. Well, if that's so true, I wish my palm would itch some more. I could do with some money. All right. So if somebody's palm is itching, they may say, "Oh, you're getting money." Therefore, they may act as if they're going to get money. All right. So making a decision based on an already held belief and acting as the belief is true and any other information to the contrary. All right. So if somebody came and brought you money and said, "I knew it's because my palm was itching." Well, it might have been somebody may have owed you some money, or somebody thought about you, and probably remembered, "Hey, let me do something for you." All right. It might not be just that, but people might attribute it back to the belief. All right. Again, we're not here to discuss whether people's beliefs are true or not true. That's not the purposes of the class. At this point, we are discussing how people come to decision making. Another example of those, and we have a number of these. I'm sure when we normally have it in a face-to-face class, they give me all kind of examples. I'm sure you have heard, well, you don't open an umbrella inside a house, right? Bad luck. I think I've heard that one. So then people may choose not to open umbrellas inside their house, okay, or inside a building. What about, you may have heard, if someone is sweeping and somebody sweep your feet, and it means you're not going to get married. Well, that probably explains why I'm not married. Maybe I could just sweep my feet a few times. I'm just kidding. But I'm just saying that could be a belief, right? But again, attributing the outcome to the belief, all right, or acting as though the belief is true, and then making decisions around the belief. What else have you heard? We have heard many others. I'm sure you have heard different things. All right, let's say people believe in horoscope, and they may read a horoscope in a particular newspaper, all right? And well, I noticed that. Well, I don't follow horoscope, but I noticed that different papers have different horoscopes, so I'm not too sure. So I guess I guess people may have a preference towards a particular newspaper, so they might read horoscope in that newspaper. My only intrigue is why all the newspapers saying something different. If all the stars lining up, they all need to say the same thing. I don't understand how one newspaper is saying something from another one. But that's just Mr. Igor's personal view. Just saying, I just figured that the horoscope is the horoscope. If it's supposed to, govern the behaviors of other people and outcomes of life, it should all line up. We can't have different newspapers saying different things. I have just noticed in the past that I've noticed that in Trinidad and Tobago we have 3 daily newspapers and all 3 say different stuff. Just saying. However, again, people may believe, and so we're talking about how do they attribute their beliefs or how do they act based on the beliefs that they have. All right, and so let me give you another example that I thought was really interesting. This one was a real life one that happened to me some years ago. I went into a convenience store in Trinidad, one of those stores that sells like household stuff and items, bowls and cups and plates and brooms and containers and stuff. So they sell a number of household stuff. So I went in this particular store in Trinidad. I was looking for some kitchen item I was looking for. And as I went in the store that day, I was looking around for some items. It was a relatively large enough store. And so while in the store, I'm looking around for my item, a young lady who seemed to be working in the store, she kind of stopped me and said, "Can I ask you a question?" So I said, "Yeah, sure, no problem." So she said to me, if your boyfriend buy you a shoe, what does that mean?" So I was like, if you could see my facial expression, I was just like, I don't know. I look confused. It was a very strange question. I never got a question like that before. If your boyfriend buy you a shoe, what does that mean? My first response was, I hope it means he likes you or he loves you. I hope so. So I kind of hesitated because being a lecturer for a period of time, I've long since learned that one side of intelligence, I must never be too hurried to answer a question. Always answer cautiously. Get more context before you give a outright answer. So I kind of hesitated. I didn't want to give any information. So I thought to myself, oh, okay. So I was like, okay. So I told her, well, I think he probably doesn't love you, like you. So just about, I would presume, 6 feet away was another lady. She seemed to be a more mature woman who was also working in the store. By the clothes they had on. They were working in the store. So she saw the girl come to me, and like, she probably, I don't know if she made an association by what she thought was asked, or she heard the girl asking me. So the woman, the more mature woman said, girl, a good Trinity accent, of course, because this was in Trinidad. Girl, I tell you already, if a man buy you a shoe, that means he's going to walk out your life. Well, I was a little intrigued because I've never heard this before in my life, right? So I was really intrigued. So I'm thinking to myself, oh, wow, that's interesting. Oh, is that what that means? So I was telling myself, well, if a man going to walk out your life, well, if I were a man, I'm not, but if I were a man and he's going to walk out your life, I wouldn't buy a shoe. I would save my money and leave. Why would I spend any money before I walk out? That's just me. I just thought, logical. But from the look on the young girl's face, she looked really like she was visibly concerned, like she was really bothered. Like this thing was really weighing on her mind. Like, if this thing is true, then girl started to look like she questioning her relationship now, and now she's thinking, oh my gosh, this must mean something bad going on happening in my relationship. So the girl started to look really, she really looked scared. She looked concerned, like she was really asking for real, like she really wanted to know what. So I look at her perturbed now. I didn't want to get too much in the girl's business. So I just thought, well girl, if it really bothers you that much, the next time tell him buy you a watch. Well, I mean, I don't know if a watch have a meaning too, because that would just probably make it even terrible if buying a watch means something else. But just making the point that, again, if she believed it, right, or if she was convinced of that particular belief, it means then, what do you think, how that's going to affect her relationship from going forward? She's going to act now either in anticipation, now she's being very watchful, she questioned everything the guy might be doing. These are some examples of behavior that she may demonstrate because of the belief. And this is how powerful a confirmation bias is. If you believe something, then you act as if the belief is true. And so any information that contradicts that belief, you'll be like, oh, no, this is what it is. And so old wives' tales or folklore, these are some great examples of confirmation bias. And we can apply confirmation bias in different aspects of life. People can have a belief about people can have a belief about a race, people can have a belief about, people who live in a particular place. All of these are beliefs that we could have, and we could treat people or act a particular way because of the belief. All right, so confirmation bias is all around us, and I need to go over that again. Let me repeat myself one more time. It's a tendency to act on a belief that we have. And we act like the belief is true. Whether or not we get information to contradict the belief, we discount it or we ignore it. Right? Now, of course, a rational decision making or moving towards more rational types of decision making may cause us to question a little bit more to find out whether or not there's any other information that might be impressing the decision. But without looking for more rational aspects to question the decision, to think if there's any other factors impacting the information at the time, we are not acting as rational as we can be. We are now acting on shortcuts in decision making by just attributing the belief. The belief is it. That's what I believe. That's it. I'm not going to question anything else. So the lack of questioning or coming towards more objective types reasoning to get towards a decision is what we're referring to here. And that's what biases have. It's a lack of further questioning. It's a lack of further investigation. We just attribute it to a simplified belief, and that's it. All right, so that makes sense to you, and I'm sure you have some other examples that they are. So you can write them down. I only type 2 here, but you could type down some other types of examples that people believe and actively believe is true. And that can be across any part of life, right? I just use the old wives' tales as examples because these are probably a little bit more interesting and they're quick to be able to identify. And you may also be able to know people who believe it or you've heard of these before as well. Wonderful. The second type of bias we have now is the anchoring bias. Let's talk a little bit about the anchoring bias. The anchoring bias, I have to go up a little bit here. Right. The term anchoring is used to describe the common human tendency to rely too heavily or to anchor on one trait or extremely limited information when making a decision. Usually, once the anchor is set, there's a bias towards it. So normally when the person is going to make a decision, they use one basis of information. That's it. All right, and they're not going to use anything else. Like for instance, I had a student one time. Let me type this here. He said, "Mr. God, I don't buy no car unless it's a Toyota. If I'm going to buy a car, let's put that here. If I am going to buy a car, it must be a Toyota." Okay. All right, that's a great example of anchoring bias. Okay, so making a decision based on one trait of information. I remember once a lady told me that too. She said to me she went to purchasing a car again. I'm just using the car as an example. And she said to me she walked in a dealership where they sell cars. And they told her, well, besides the amount of money she had to pay, she had a range of money she had to pay. So she said in this range, so they asked her, well, what color kind of car you want? And we have a couple options of series of cars that you can buy. And within the price range you have. And she was like, well, listen, I don't care what the car is. Long as the car is red, the color of the car must be red. And she was actually serious. She actually made a decision on that. Like, wow, okay, cool, interesting. So, and this is a great example again of anchoring bias. As long as you make decisions on one trait of information or extremely limited bits of information, it's so extreme that you can lump them into one major category. You're like, wow, the person makes a decision on that. And people do that all the time. It's like, I don't want to hear anything. As long as this, that's what I'm doing. That's it. All right, so you might hear people say, well, my family bank with this bank. Let's say you grow up on your family bank with maybe Republic Bank or Royal Bank or Bank of Nova Scotia or Scotia Bank. You might tell yourself, well, that's a no-brainer for me. I'm going to do the same banking my lineage came in with. All right? Whatever they bank with, that's it for me. I didn't question, I didn't go and investigate any other bank. My parents always bank with this and they opened an account for me when I was a younger child and this was the bank they bank with. I stick with the bank. That's an example of anchoring bias. Right, so when you said anchoring, all biases can be helpful at times, but in some cases they may not be. They may not be, and so we have that tendency whereby people may make decisions like that. And so again, any type of decision where people only make it on one trait of information, right? Therefore, you just say, wow, that's an example of anchoring bias. All right, and it happens all around us. If you work, you've seen this before. If you live in a family, you've seen this before. People just make one decision based on one bit of information. Now remember, the rational decision making process or movement towards rational decision making is when you learn to poke some more holes, reflect a bit more, investigate a couple more factors or criteria before making your decision. All right, trying to make sure that you make sound decisions where we broaden out those factors of consideration before we make a decision. And that's what the class is about. But it's showing you the two sides of the fence. We are talking about rational decision making, where we consider multiple factors before we make a decision. Where we have the opposite, where we have the shortcuts in decision making, where people will make decisions based on heuristics. So far, we talked about biases, where they shortcut the process. They use limited factors in making decision making, and so we are stating then that the quality of the decision is not necessarily as strong or as high because they are using shortcuts. That's what we say. It will get by, we satisfice. Remember that word we talked about? But it's not necessarily the highest quality decision. All right, great, not hard at all. All these are everyday life. So in this class, we're discussing everyday life. Let's go on to our third bias, which is the overconfidence effect. Notice the word bias is not really used in this one. That's fine. All right, but again, it's pretty much the same thing as shortcut in decision making. All right, so what's the overconfidence effect? The name actually says it. This is a well-established bias in which someone's subjective confidence in their own thoughts and judgment is greater than their objective accuracy. So somebody say, I am 99% sure, but when you really check it, trust me, they're really not. All right, or somebody might say, I'm totally sure about this. How? And if you peel on that, how are you so sure about that? Some selective information that you have somewhere that guide them to this conclusion. You're like, really? Okay. All right, you may not have done enough or sufficient enough analysis to be 99% sure. You probably have some selective joints of information in your mind that you are putting towards. So really, okay, all right. So this is overconfidence effect speaks for itself. All right, this speaks for itself. Great. So you have it there. People might rate themselves as 99% sure. All right. This bias is present when a person is very sure of their own abilities. That should say when a person is very sure. Why does it say has very sure? Let's put it just is very sure of their own abilities when in fact a test of said abilities may not be as they state. All right, so the overconfidence effect is somebody has extreme high confidence, not in somebody or in a situation, no, in themselves. Please make that clear. People overconfidence effect has to be that they have this high levels of confidence in themselves, right? Not in situations, not in other people, but in themselves. They think that, of course, as long as I'm involved and I'm involved, then of course I am almost sure about what I say. I'm almost sure I will get through. I am absolutely sure that things are going to go my way, right? So it has to be linked to the individual, right? So please remember that the overconfidence effect has to do with one's subjective, meaning subjective means it's not objective, right? There's no way we could test this. It's all in your head, right? It's all in your own personal belief in your own self and your capabilities and your ideologies and your conclusions. All right? Yes. All right. So that's easy. We don't have to give an example of that. I think we get that pretty correct. All right. And the last one we have here, which will be also on your slide, all right, is the hindsight bias. So the hindsight bias is often referred to as the I knew it all along phenomenon. People often, after seeing or experiencing the end result of a situation, often explain that they knew it all along. Now, this is interesting. This is one of those things where, again, people swear they know something, but they always tend to know it after the fact. When they experience the outcome, then they know. And then you told them a lot, no, you didn't know it all along. You clearly didn't know it all along. All right, so they have an example here, and I'll give you another one. For example, a student may experience hindsight bias in their own studies. As they read their course textbook, the information may seem easy. Of course, they may think after reading the results of a study or experiment in the textbook, I could have figured that out, I knew that. But, the inverted comma should end right around here. But, when the test comes, however, the presence of many different answers on a multiple choice test may make the student recognize that they did not know the material quite as well as they thought they did. So again, after presenting information, people quickly come to conclusions, and then after the fact, you realize, did you really know that all along? Yeah, I knew that. Yeah, did you? Yeah, but we didn't see the evidence of that though when we actually assessed you to see whether or not you did know or not. This is really prevalent when it comes to like sports. Let's say if it's is playing a sport, let's say whatever you're into, cricket or football or some of the sports, and and he probably said, yeah, I know they're gonna win. Like I think I understand was the last night was Super Bowl in the United States, right? And so people were kind of like talking about, yeah, I know this team is gonna win. I knew that all along. I know for sure what's gonna happen, right? I knew that. All right, and when the results happen, they might say, well, I knew that all along. Now, a lot of times, though, they didn't really know it all along. They thought they did, right? They may have had selective information that made them predict. But they also act like this thing is more predictable. Like sometimes somebody might say, well, hey, I'm not too sure, boy. I feel I might win. But when they finish, when they say, oh, yeah, I knew they were going to win. No, you said before that you weren't sure. And a lot of times, this is what happens with hindsight bias. When the results show or they come out, then people say, oh yes, I'm so sure. I knew that was going to happen. Yeah, but you only know that after the fact. And so this is how you recognize hindsight bias, because the result or the experience would have happened already. And when it happens, then you say you were sure. Please make a note of that. That's what hindsight means, after the fact. When you look in hindsight, after the fact, now you say, oh yeah, I knew that. Oh, I knew that. But you only say you know it. Well, you only are sure that you know it after the results have come out. And then you say, I knew that. I'm like, really? Did you really? Did you really know that? Because we look like you were hesitating before, or you were kind of not sure before, or there were other factors that may have played in, and you're like, right? But after the results show, yeah, I'm sure. We see it around election time, and a party might win an election. They say, I knew they were going to win. I knew they were going to win. Well, you probably didn't know for sure, but you may have had an inkling that they were going to win. But notice again that hindsight bias is always after the fact that the person said, I knew it all along. Right? Even though while they were going along, they may or may not have known it very well. They didn't investigate the time, or they were depending on selective data all along. Because they didn't do a comprehensive analysis or proper assessment, they really can't know for sure. And then, of course, we could never really know for sure with life or with things we don't have control over, right? We may not know that for sure exactly. And so these are examples again. So, but hindsight bias, always after the fact, the person say, I knew it all along. More times than not, somebody will point out, did you really know that all along? How you knew that all along? What was the process you came to your conclusion? It might be some shortcut process they did. Well, I knew that. All right, so remember with hindsight bias, it's after the fact. The person says, I knew it all along. After seeing or experiencing the end result of a situation. They say, oh yeah, I knew that. All right, so that's one way you know hindsight bias. The person will say, I knew it all along. Very well indeed. So therein wraps up our 4 biases. Nothing hard at all. These are everyday life. You've seen these before. You've heard these before. We may just refer to them by specific types of terminology for the purposes of this class. But I'm sure that you would have come across some of these across in your life. Good. So looking forward to seeing how you'll do your assessment this week for me. And looking forward to seeing what other else we have that we're going to study in this class regarding how people actually come to decision making.